It's a rehome a rescue dog, and yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and I'm joined by Alex Phillips today. We're on your TV, radio and online.
Yeah, we are with you until midday, getting straight to the point of the day's biggest stories, talking to our expert guests and even giving you our own frank opinions.
Yes, indeed, and make sure you get in touch with your opinions as well. You can get in touch on gbviews@gbnews.uk and we'll get to those throughout the show. But first, here's your latest headlines with Rosie.
A very good morning to you. It's just 2 minutes past 10. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date. Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak have gone head-to-head in the first double-headed leadership debate. The two candidates traded blows over tax, with the Foreign Secretary saying Rishi Sunak would lead the country into recession. But the former Chancellor claimed there was nothing conservative about Ms Truss's approach.
Still haven't got an answer to this question, right? So if we could just get an answer to this question.
This Chancellor has raised taxes to the highest rate for 70 years.
Right.
And we're now predicted a recession.
OK, I now want to bring in
the figures.
Some commentators have accused Rishi Sunak of speaking over Liz Truss during the debate. Well, David Davis is the former Brexit secretary. He told us the next Prime Minister needs to navigate robust debate.
He was passionate, and as he should be. I mean, the issues we're talking about here are huge. I mean, the next Prime Minister is going to face some of the most difficult crises possibly in a century. Whoever wins this contest is going to have to stand at the dispatch box of the House of Commons and deal with the House of Commons. I've done that, you know, and it's very fierce. It's very hard exchanges. If you can't cope with that, then, you know, you won't make a decent Prime Minister.
Archie Battersby's parents are vowing to continue their son's life support fight, despite a legal ruling that treatment for him can stop. Yesterday, appeal court judges ruled that doctors at the Royal London Hospital could lawfully stop providing life-saving care. The 12-year-old hasn't regained consciousness since suffering an accident at home in April. It's now just over 24 hours before Archie can legally be taken off life support. Archie's mother, Holly, told us she's going to appeal.
I believe we've still got one more option, which obviously we've come this far. I'm not going to stop now.
What is that option?
There's a possibility, the United Nations or the European Court, I believe. So we're deciding today. Obviously, it's not something any parent wants to face again.
MPs are criticising the government over its handling of the coronavirus traffic light system, which set the rules for those arriving in the UK. The Public Accounts Committee says nearly £500 million was spent on the scheme, but only 2% of those required to quarantine in hotels actually tested positive. The committee also says the government's approach to border controls and quarantine caused huge confusion, with 10 rule changes in a year. Public concern over inflation has reached its highest level in 40 years. It's a poll by Ipsos that found that 45% of adults think it's one of the most important issues facing the country today as prices continue to rise. In particular, those between 18 and 34 were most concerned. Property expert Kunle Barker told GB News one of the key impacts was the prices of mortgages.
The real problem is about affordability. Will people be able to afford mortgages? Will they pass tests to be able to actually get a mortgage? I predict certainly a slowdown in the market, maybe a slight normalisation. Perversely, some people might think that's what we need because, you know, the house prices are out of control at the moment.
MPs have accused the energy regulator Ofgem of being negligent. The Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy says the government needs to change its out-of-date energy bill support for households. The Select Committee added that a massive insulation drive needs to be launched urgently, as it would permanently bring down bills. Communities that are suffering from repeated flooding could benefit from a new £100 million funding package designed to help protect their properties. The money will be available for areas where 10 or more homes have flooded at least twice in the last 10 years. It's also for places where community-wide flood defences are not always viable. Increased drinking fuelled by the pandemic could lead to thousands of extra deaths over the next 20 years. A study by the University of Sheffield found that people who were drinking at risky levels before the pandemic increased their alcohol consumption when COVID hit. The research scenario also shows that over the next 20 years, there'll be over 124,000 additional hospital admissions in men and 83,000 in women. This is GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the point.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moriki, and Alex Phillips. We're on your TV, radio and online, and here's what's coming up today.
Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak clashed last night in the first head-to-head debate in the race to be Britain's next Prime Minister. What did you make of the debate? Or did you decide to skip it altogether? Let us know at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
And the parents of 12-year-old Archie Battersby have lost an appeal against the decision to end his life support. Archie's mum spoke to GB News this morning. We'll show you what she had to say, and we'll ask whether parents should have the final say in cases like this.
And the UK is set to host the Eurovision Song Contest next year on behalf of Ukraine, who can't do so because of the war. Could we actually have a shot at winning this time? And where do you think it should be held? Get in touch and do let us know.
Yes, you can let us know at gbviews@gbnews.uk, as well as getting in touch with any other opinions you have about everything we're discussing today. We'll try and get to as many views as we can throughout the show.
But first, Mercy is going to give us her views on how the BBC handled last night's Tory leadership debate.
Now, some of you may have decided to skip the BBC Tory leadership debate last night between Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak. For those that did catch it, my deepest condolences. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I don't know about you, but I finished that debate feeling discombobulated and frazzled. The format was odd. There was one presenter, there were two BBC journalists sitting at the side like hawks, a sort of quasi-judges, plus an audience that barely got to ask any questions, quite frankly. There was a lot of interrupting, poor moderation of the debate, in my opinion. Liz Truss couldn't get a word in edgeways for love nor money, for goodness sakes. But something else bothered me more. Now, firstly, before I say this, disclaimer, I'm not in favour of cancelling the BBC in spite of the many problems that blight the institution. For instance, it's ridiculous, I think, that people are slapped with criminal convictions for not paying their licence fees. By the way, Ministry of Justice data shows women are 10 times more likely to be convicted for not paying the £159 annual fee. An annual fee that is higher than virtually everywhere else in Europe, which has a TV licence system, although, of course, we are the largest broadcaster, public service broadcaster in the world, the BBC is. Also, why on earth should somebody on minimum wage be forced to pay the same price for watching the television as a billionaire? It doesn't make sense to me. And this is the one that particularly bothers me. The BBC is a metropolitan liberal elite institution. It's simply a middle-class corporation. That's not my opinion. That's according to the BBC's own figures. Only 20% of the BBC's workforce come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, a figure they have said they hope to increase to 25% over the next 5 years. In fact, a couple of years ago, James Purnell, the BBC's then Director of Radio and Education, admitted that 1 in 4 of the BBC's management staff were privately educated. This is, of course, compared to around 7% of the country at large who go to private school. And the BBC's out-of-touchness, I think, really showed last night in the leadership debate. So some background. Yesterday afternoon, Nadine Dorries, a key Boris ally, posted this tweet. She said, Liz Truss will be travelling the country wearing her earrings, which cost circa £4.50 from Claire's Accessories. Meanwhile, Rishi visits Teesside in Prada shoes worth £450 and sported the 3,500 bespoke suit as he prepared for Crunch leadership vote. Now, following that tweet, Tory MP Angela Robertson, who's a Truss backer, tweeted this. FFS, Nadine, you can guess what the FFS means. She said, muted. I mean, for goodness sakes, it's all very petty, isn't it? But Despite it being petty, our beloved Beeb thought that this pathetic display of Tory spatting was worth designating a whole segment to in yesterday's debate. I'm looking at your earrings, Liz Truss. There's the issue of how much they cost in the press today, Sophie Rayworth said. Not pleased with the answers. Another BBC journalist, political editor, chimed in and said, a very prominent supporter of yours is making very specific claims about your rival's choice of clothing. I'm asking you, very specifically, Liz Truss, whether you disown that. That was Chris Mason chiming in there, the political editor. Now, meanwhile, do you know how many conversations were dedicated to speaking about immigration? An issue, by the way, which 1 in 3 working class people say is one of the most important issues facing the country? 0 hours, 0 minutes were dedicated to that. Do you know how long they spoke about the chronic need to build more housing? Zilch, no conversations. Crime, nada. Does the BBC think anyone in the general population actually cares whether Liz Truss's earrings are Claire's accessories or Christian Dior? I don't care that Rishi Sunak was supposedly wearing £450 Prada shoes. We care about what's coming out of his mouth, not what's on his feet. The BBC, our public service broadcaster that we pay for at the threat of being sent to jail, did not cover itself in glory last night. And the journalist hosting the debate certainly did not serve the public well at all.
I just don't even know how to unpack that. There's so many things. I've been jotting down a load of stuff. So first of all, it's really interesting you talk about the BBC execs. A lot of this, I think, comes down to the professionalisation of journalism.
Yeah.
I went to journalism school, costs an arm and a leg, and loads of other people there were there because they had good contacts, they had parents in the industry. I was the odd one out.
Yeah, you're not from that kind of background.
No, definitely not. No, my parents actually had to remortgage the house to help pay my journalism school. But
paid off, clearly.
Well, here I am.
Yes.
I got there in the end. But no, what's interesting is back in the day, you could go and be an apprentice reporter as a hack. You know, you'd go to your local newspaper, notepad and pen, and the representation in journalism from working classes was so much more, which is so important, I think, to, you know, getting public information across to your readership and people, you know, who come from the same background as you. I thought Rishi Sunak should have defended his expensive suit by saying he was far too little to get something off the rail. So that
would have been good.
That would have been good. That would have been honesty. And with the BBC's cover of this, it's interesting, you're right, no social issues discussed. Nothing about the trans debate, nothing about, you know, it was all sort of, they didn't touch any subjects, which people do want being spoken about. But I think the thing that wound me up the most was that weird moving set. You know, sometimes you sit on a train and you can't tell if your train is moving or the one next to it. I felt seasick after an hour.
I've had that in the car, actually, where somebody's going forward and it feels like I'm going backwards and then my heart drops. Anyway, that's a digression there. I think the point you make about it's becoming more and more middle class. It's something I spoke about yesterday, if you remember, when I said actually politics is becoming more and more middle class. There's fewer working class people going into politics. It's the same with journalism, I fear. So, yeah, there you go. Let us know what you made of yesterday's debate. Did you think the BBC did a good job of properly representing the issues that you want to hear about when they were quizzing Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak? Rishi Sunak, yeah, that's for a second. Well, let's go to that top story, shall we? And our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, is in Stoke-on-Trent. He listened to that debate we were just talking about last night. Good morning, Darren. What did you make of it all?
Well, first of all, it was pretty feisty, wasn't it? Pretty ferocious, I would suggest, at times. We got a real sense that Rishi Sunak was trying to make a point, particularly at the start, that he felt that he needed to be quite aggressive in putting forward his plans, as we said, rather consistent plans when it comes to the economy, attacking Liz Truss's kind of fairy tale economics, if you like, as he would put it, around cutting taxes at a time in which inflation is high. Did it go too far? Was he too aggressive? Was he mansplaining, as Therese Coffey, the Work and Pension Secretary, put it to me? Well, that'll be up for viewers to decide. But certainly, I think it was an attempt in many ways for Rishi to come out kind of fighting, if you like, because he needs to. If we believe those opinion polls, he is the underdog in all of this. He is behind Liz Truss. He needs to do something to try and change this campaign. Though I think last night there wasn't really much of a game changer. In many regards, it was probably a score draw between both of them. There clearly is a big dividing line between both Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak on this issue of the economy and taxation. It dominated the first half of that programme last night, and it is a pretty stark choice, I think, for lots of Conservative voters, lots of the members who will start deciding who to vote for in the days to come. But at times it was also quite personal. I mean, that attack in which Rishi Sunak reminded Liz Truss that she'd been a Remainer who'd propagated Project Fear, so-called Project Fear, during the referendum, was quite personal in many regards, though there was a bit of a love-in towards the end when they talked about their admiration for each other. I think there are two really interesting things. First of all, is how Liz Truss, even though she's been in the cabinet very long, and even though she's been very loyal to Boris Johnson, and even though she was a Remainer, in many ways is kind of successfully portraying herself as the insurgent candidate in all of this. She's trying to challenge the orthodoxy when it comes to economic policy, whereas Rishi Sunak, who was on the other side of the coin during the Brexit referendum, is very much seen as the establishment candidate, even though he, of course, moved against Boris Johnson. And I think also in the end, the big question is, where do we go next from this? Because we know what the debating points are. So when we have another debate tonight and another one in a couple of days' time, where are the candidates going to take this, that it may start to sway opinion? Because at the moment, yes, it's getting louder and it's getting more furious in many ways, but the debates fundamentally are remaining the same.
Darren, thank you ever so much. Darren McCaffrey there, our political editor. Well, joining us now for some more reaction is Nigel Nelson, the political editor of the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People. Nigel, what was your big take home from that debate?
I think I agree with Darren. It was a score draw, basically. What we had was Rishi Sunak being bullying and patronising, but on the other hand, he was far more sure-footed and certainly slicker, and to my mind, looked more like a prime minister. On the other hand, you get Liz Truss, who I thought answered questions directly in a way that Rishi Sunak didn't. So she came across, if you like, as more purposeful, more honest, but she's not a great debater. That format doesn't really suit her. So in that sense, Rishi Sunak is better at it. But neither side scored a major blow against the other. And so it kind of goes on. Rishi Sunak really needed a breakthrough last night, I would have thought, to keep some momentum in his campaign. And that just didn't happen.
Lots of people, lots of journalists like us will be asking who do you think won the debate yesterday? Virginia here has already got in touch and said the debate should worry everyone in the UK. Are these two the best of the bunch? So the question is really, were Labour the real winners of the debate yesterday?
Yes, I think Labour are probably the winners of the entire leadership campaign. What you've got is the Tories sort of knocking each other constantly, and all that can do is to help Keir Starmer. The Tories are showing up their huge differences at the moment, which Keir Starmer can capitalise on. I mean, Labour's already making attack videos, just taking snippets of what the various candidates have said about each other to show just how divided the Conservative Party is. And it is a bit difficult, despite what Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss said at the end of the debate yesterday, it is difficult to see quite how they would work together after all this is over.
It's interesting you say that, but my feeling is, other than the difference on whether to cut tax now or later after dealing with inflation, you couldn't put a cigarette paper between them. And listening to Keir Starmer's speech yesterday as well, he sounded very much like the Conservative manifesto of 2019.
Well, I mean, there was a bit of a Barney yesterday about where Labour actually stands on public ownership, which Keir Starmer has been trying to clear up since then. I'm not sure yet he quite has cleared it up yet. I don't know quite whether the Labour Party would nationalise in the way that they plan to do in 2019 at the next election, but we'll have to see about that. But I mean, what Keir Starmer is doing is trying to be pragmatic. It's very much a sort of Tony Blair way of approaching it. It's not about ideology. It's about what works. And in the event that he ended up, say, against Rishi Sunak, it would be very interesting to see which side won out on that kind of pragmatic approach.
Nigel, thank you ever so much. Nigel Nelson there, who's the editor of Sunday Mirror and Sunday People. Well, you've been sending your views in as well, one that I've particularly been drawn to. It comes in from Steve, who says, the debates are moot. We don't get to vote. Our vote for Boris didn't have the longevity we thought, and democracy is dead. It's a really interesting point he's making there.
Yeah, I completely understand why Stephen made that point, but this is our this is how it works.
This is how it works.
So
yeah.
sadly, I mean, Barbara says we weren't watching the debates as we're not Conservative members. Yes, only a handful, 160,000 of Conservative members will have a say in who becomes the next Prime Minister. But again, that is how it works.
It's something like 0.29% of the population. I think what's so interesting is this sort of contrast between running this thing like presidential open primaries in America, and it's almost giving people this false sense that they are the plebiscite. They do have ownership of this, but they don't.
Yeah, they don't. This is how it's always worked. Labour have a similar system. So we never elect necessarily a Prime Minister. We elect parties, and the parties' leaders are voted by the membership. So,
but interesting, going back to what Steve is saying there, back in 2019, when people did vote for the Conservative Party in droves, a lot of people, it was a personal vote to Boris, and it didn't survive the term. So, you know, he might have a point about our democracy there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, keep your views coming in. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, coming up, the family of 12-year-old Archie Battersby, who suffered a catastrophic brain injury, have been refused permission to appeal against a decision to end his life support treatment. After the break, we'll be asking whether parents should have more power when it comes to end-of-life decisions. That's after this weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Some areas of cloud around at first, especially central and southern parts of the UK, but sunny spells will develop. And apart from a few showers, many places will have a dry day. High pressure is moving in from the west. The low pressure is still departing to the east into Scandinavia. And a weather front has moved south across the country overnight. Now, this is now a weak feature, but it's brought a legacy of cloud for northern England into the Midlands, southern counties as well. It will take some time for that cloud to break up and for sunny spells to develop, but they will. And apart from a few showers across central areas and for the north of Scotland as well, many places will have a dry day. And with the sunny spells developing, with winds turning lighter, well, it'll feel warm with highs of 22 to 25 Celsius in the south, high teens and around 20 Celsius at best in the north. Through the evening, the cloud disappears, and with lengthy clear spells overnight and with light winds, well, it's going to be a cool night once again. I think in towns and cities, those temperatures will hold up at around 11, 12, 13 Celsius. But in sheltered parts, especially in the countryside, temperatures down to 5 to 8 Celsius. So a fresh start to tomorrow, but actually plenty of sunshine first thing. In fact, it looks like a sunny day for many, especially in the north, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, seeing those sunny spells continuing. But further south, some lively showers will break out and drift north into Wales and the Midlands by the afternoon. Away from those showers, temperatures faring well once again, with highs of 22 or 23 Celsius. Thursday sees further showers, especially in the north and the west. Likewise on Friday, but at the same time there will be some sunny spells and it will start to warm up as well.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GBNews.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good morning, it's 10:26 and this is To The Point with Alex Phillips and myself, Mercy Moroki, on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Now, the parents of 12-year-old Archie Battersby have lost an appeal against a decision to allow his life support treatment to end.
Yes, the Court of Appeal ruled there were no grounds for them to challenge the decision that continuing Archie's treatment was, quote, futile.
Archie's family will now take their fight to the European Court of Human Rights. Holly Dance, Archie's mum, spoke to Eamon and Rosie earlier today.
No, I believe we've still got one more option, which obviously we've come this far. I'm not going to stop now. I demanded a private blood test. We haven't been given that. And it was the examiners that actually asked the hospital, has this child been given muscle relaxing drugs? They said Archie was brain dead after 2 days of being in hospital.
Yeah.
If that's the case, why is he still being heavily sedated 5 weeks later?
I mean, you are convinced your boy will wake up.
I know he will wake up.
You know he will wake
up? I know 100% he will wake up.
But what happens if you don't get leave to appeal this again?
He's not going to get a chance to wake up. He's just going to be... He'll be killed, won't he?
Killed as a...
That's how I see it. He'll be killed.
Description, yeah.
Along with the other children like Charlie Gard, Alfie Evans. It's not fair.
Well, that's such a difficult position for any family to be in, any mother, any parent. It'd be really hard to imagine what anyone would do in Archie's family's position. And in fact, if you had a 7-year-old or a small child and you thought there was a sliver of a chance that you could change the outcome, what would you do? Would you be OK with the doctors and the courts saying the machine has to be switched off, or actually would you be fighting to keep your child alive? And should parents have more power over the end of life decisions? That's really the question we're asking today.
Well, joining us to discuss this further is Rabbi Dr. Jonathan Romain, MBE. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, none of us here, I think, are professional medics. We don't understand the intricacies and nuances of neuroscience. But, I mean, what a very difficult decision for the parents and very difficult as well, I'd imagine, for people to look at this through the eyes of the law.
Yes, and it's doubly tragic, isn't it? Firstly, the impending death of a child, but also the conflict between the two groups who normally work together to save life. In other words, the parents and the doctors. And I noticed the mother just quoted Charlie Gard and Alfie Evans. They were about 4 or 5 years ago, and it just shows how rare this situation is. And normally, most parents and doctors will work together, feel they're on the same side. And so it's really painful when there is this conflict between them right now. And of course, parents do not expect to bury their children. It's against the natural order of things, and therefore it makes us feel even more sad. But I suppose the key question here is when to fight and when to let go. And I suppose, and we can't talk about this case because we haven't seen the medical notes, but, the parents have every right to insist on a full diagnosis, every right to push for all the proper treatments and the full knowledge of the options. But I would have thought there comes a point, in fact, I know there comes a point where you just have to say the surgeons, the doctors, the medics, they actually are the experts. And yes, parents can question, can challenge, but if there's a unanimous medical opinion and it's then backed up by the courts, there comes a point where you have to say this is awful, but I am going to let go, because otherwise you're doing a disservice to the child. Now, whether that applies in this particular case, it's always hard to know. But there does come a point where you do have to let go. And I suppose what's so hard for parents, and again, I'm not talking about this case, is how to separate your needs and the child's needs. There's a very thin dividing line between saying, I don't want my child to die, and I don't want me to lose my child. How much is it about you and your sense of loss, and how much is it the best interests of the child? And if the child is already brain dead, which may or may not be the case in this particular situation, then there comes a point where, however tragic, however painful, you just have to accept the child has died, because actually it is only surviving anyway on artificial support.
Yeah, I do wonder. I know you've been a sort of campaigner of choice in matters of difficult dying, so to speak, and you've set up the Interfaith Leaders for Dignity in Dying group, which campaigns for terminally ill people to have the choice of letting themselves die. I wonder what how you navigate the complexity of the fact this child obviously can't make their own decision. So surely it's the parents' decision whether they should let their own child die or not. Why is it right for that choice to be taken away from them? And I completely understand what you're saying about, the doctors have, all the doctors have said unanimously that it's the right decision. But surely the parent has the ultimate decision over the life and death of their child.
Yes, and by the way, this is very different from the Dignity in Dying campaign, which only deals with adults who are who have ability to make their own minds up, and it certainly never advocates assisted dying for those who cannot do so of their own free will. So this is very, very different. Well, you're right. In this case, the child can't, not because it's a child, but because he lacks consciousness, can't make up its own mind, and therefore he or she depends on external people. First cause, of course, the first point of call is to the parents. But, there comes a point where the parents, their knowledge, or rather what the parents have is a wish for the child to survive. They don't have the knowledge or the expertise to decide whether the child is able to do so. Whereas there comes a point, where you have to rely on experts. Whether it's navigating through a sea channel or mending a car, there are people who do know more than the parents. The parents may love the child, but the clinicians are the ones who can actually say, this child has already died, it's already brain dead. And therefore, there comes a point where the parents' desire to keep going for the child as long as possible has to give way to the weight of medical evidence. Now, if there's divided evidence, okay, then the parents can fight. But if it's unanimous medical evidence, then why are the parents holding out other than for just not wanting to let go, which is totally understandable, and I don't blame the parents at all. But if it was my child, and all the doctors were saying, look, the child has actually already died, it's incapable of surviving without the life support machine, then incredibly reluctantly, I would say, well, you're the experts and I'm not. And by the way, I've been in that situation, not with my own child, but sat with a congregant whose child had died, was being kept alive, and I was with them literally as they held the child in their hand. The medics turned off the machine and they gently said goodbye. And it was the right decision. And by the way, it also meant that they didn't have this anger, which obviously then can impede the grieving process. Because what happens if and when Archie does pass away, are the parents going to be able to actually return to the stream of life, or are they constantly going to be fighting this battle and constantly reliving it? So I feel incredibly sorry for them.
Yeah, it's a lot for them to deal with, and in the wake of all of this, it will be very hard knowing how much time and energy they put in. Dr. Jonathan Romain, thank you ever so much for joining us to discuss this really delicate issue.
Yes, get your views in on anything we've been speaking about today and what you make of that moral dilemma about who should have the final say. GBViews at gbnews.uk. But after the break, the UK is set to host the Eurovision next year, Eurovision Song Contest, after organisers said it wouldn't be safe to host it in Ukraine, who of course won this year's competition. Where would you like to see it? Do you want to see it held near you? Let us know. But before that, a look at this morning's news.
It's 10:35. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak have gone head-to-head in the first double-headed leadership debate. The two candidates traded blows over economic plans, with the Foreign Secretary saying Rishi Sunak would lead the country into recession. The former Chancellor claimed there was nothing conservative about Ms Truss's approach.
Still haven't got an answer to this question, right? So if we could just get an answer to this question.
This Chancellor has raised taxes to the highest rate for 70 years.
Right.
And we're now predicted a recession.
OK, I now want to bring in
the figures.
Archie Battersby's parents are vowing to continue their son's life support fight, despite a legal ruling that treatment can stop. Yesterday, appeal court judges ruled doctors at the Royal London Hospital could lawfully stop providing life-saving care. Archie's mother, Holly, told us she'll appeal.
I believe we've still got one more option, which obviously we've come this far. I'm not going to stop now.
What is that option?
There's a possibility, the United Nations or the European Court, I believe. So we're deciding today. Obviously, it's not something any parent wants to face. Again, I'm just going to give it all I can until I can't go no more.
MPs are criticising the government over its handling of the coronavirus traffic light system, which set the rules for those arriving into the UK. The Public Accounts Committee says nearly £500 million was spent on the scheme. Only 2% of those required to quarantine in hotels tested positive. The committee also says the government's approach to border controls and quarantine caused huge confusion, with 10 rule changes in 1 year. Fire chiefs are urging UK cities to prepare for wildfires after dozens of blazes broke out during last week's record-breaking temperatures. The National Fire Chiefs Council is urging inner-city services to start prioritising wildfires. This year alone, England and Wales have had over 440 wildfires, up from 247 last year. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.203 and 1.179 euros. The price of gold currently stands at £1,432 and 95 pence per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good morning. It's 10:39, going on 10:40. This is To The Point with myself, Mercy Moroki, and Alex Phillips on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio.
Now, a new study by NHS England and the University of Sheffield found that increased alcohol consumption fuelled by the pandemic could lead to thousands of extra hospital admissions, deaths and cases of disease over the next 20 years.
Yes, well, experts found that over 45s who were drinking at risky levels before the pandemic were most likely to increase their drinking when COVID-19 hit. But are we starting to see a generational divide?
Yeah, nearly a quarter of those aged 16 to 24 say they are fully teetotal. Well, joining us to discuss this further is Millie Gooch, who's the author and founder of Sober Girl Society. Millie, great to have you on. So what is it? Our parents are knocking it back like it's going out of fashion, and it actually is going out of fashion.
Yeah, I think we're really seeing a lot of young people now kind of starting to look into this kind of sober curious lifestyle is the term that's being floated around. So I personally started drinking when I was 26. I'm 30 now, and people coming to our platform are just younger and younger.
Why did you stop drinking?
I stopped drinking for my mental health. So I was a party girl. I learned to drink when I went to uni, and it was just really affecting me. So I would, go out, I would black out. I'm quite small and I was drinking very fast. And the next day I would get that horrendous hangover anxiety that we've all had, or beer fear as they term it. And it was just kind of permeating every part of my life. So I was going to work on a Monday feeling horrendous, and I just said I'm broke all the time, I've got no money, I can't afford to buy property or anything like that, because I was just drinking all the time. It was the only thing I ever did for fun, so I said, I'm going to knock it on the head.
But for you, we're sort of, absolutism, just saying, that's it, I'm not drinking at all anymore. The only way, you couldn't just go down the route of moderation and say, well, I'm going out for dinner, I'll have a glass of wine in a restaurant, or, if I'm with friends in a pub, I might have a beer or two, but knock it on the head after that.
It's actually, I think, very difficult to moderate, particularly the way alcohol affects your brain. So it affects the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain which is, responsible for weighing up decisions and things like that. So even when you've had one or two, all of a sudden that's when you go, oh, actually, I'll have a third, or actually, I'll have a fourth. So moderation is quite hard. There's also a theory that some people are natural abstainers, some people are natural moderators. So for some people, it's easier to just say, it's off the table altogether, because I'm one of those people, you put a packet of biscuits in front of me, as soon as I have one, then I'm like, OK, I'm going to eat all of them. So for me, it's just easier to say no, no drinking at all, I'm good, thanks.
Yeah, I'm a very overindulgent person as well, and I think I'm about nearly 4 months not drinking, and it's going really well. I just feel fresh all the time, and it's so much better. How did you find the transition in terms of your social life? Because as you said, it was the main thing you were doing for fun. Obviously, you were at university, and everybody's drinking at university, and there is a stereotype associated with people who've gone sober, especially young people, that they're boring, basically.
Yeah, and I found that so hard, because that's exactly all the comments I got, and, oh, I bet you're fun at parties, but not actually much changed for me in the end. I really forced myself to go out and go on nights out and still go to the bottomless brunches, but just eat more food than I drank. I actually found it OK. It was kind of a lot of learning, I think, understanding actually what you like doing. I think before, when I was drinking, I would have gone to anything. Like, you could have put me in a warehouse and I would have gone, this is great. But now it's kind of like, oh, actually, do I really want to go there? So it's kind of being a bit pickier and choosier with what I do and who I hang out with.
I mean, Svenny, when you talk about the social stigma, I guess it's why companies have really cashed in on this new movement for sobriety by, developing stuff like this, alcohol that isn't actually alcohol.
Yeah. I'm not sure about how I feel about it all, because what I feel about imitation alcohol is the same way I feel about imitation beef, or that vegans have. It's like, if you're going to be vegan, why do you need something that looks and smells and tastes like a steak, but isn't really a steak? I just feel like, why would I drink fake alcohol when I can drink something that isn't fake alcohol?
Should we put it to test? I think that's the only way to solve this. Okay. I think we've got here something that looks like stout, which doesn't look particularly... I'm not a stout drinker anyway. It's OK, it's not stout. There's definitely no booze in there.
No booze. It's booze-free.
It's nice, it's warm, very warm.
I think it tastes nicer than the real thing, because stout is really bitter, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's actually...
Yeah, I can deal with that. I don't think
like
it
a
tastes
malt drink.
I was a wine drinker. I wasn't much of a beer drinker, but that, to me, I wouldn't be able to tell if it was alcoholic or not, quite frankly. But I am having my eye on something sparkly there.
Okay, you want to go for the...
If you're a wine drinker, try the one on
So you want to go for the non-alcoholic Prosecco?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to fight you to the death
tonic.
the non-alcoholic gin and tonic or the non-alcoholic absinthe.
You can take the gin and tonic, I don't mind.
Do you want to go for that absinthe?
Well, I'm happy to go with either. You take the preference.
Do you know, I want to do the absinthe just because...
Go on then.
I was talking to Mercy earlier and I was saying, like, who in their right mind is like, oh, I could murder a glass of absinthe. It's a shame because I'm teetotal. Nobody. I mean, what is this?
Matches your dress too.
Heaven on earth.
But you can get everything now. You can get non-alcoholic sambuca, non-alcoholic tequila. There's just everything.
Yeah. So for those not watching us and listening to us on radio, we're currently trying a selection of a few... Oh, gosh.
I could make this at home. Honestly, I reckon a measure of water, a little splash of mouthwash and 5 teaspoons of sugar, and there you go.
Yeah, that does
You've got a teetotal cocktail.
So what's your favourite non-alcoholic? I've just tried, what's this, a non-alcoholic Prosecco?
Yeah. Is it all right? Do you want to clean your mouth with that?
It doesn't have that kick of alcohol. I did actually want to ask you, most of the reason why you enjoy alcohol when you drink is because of how it makes you feel. It makes you drunk, essentially, fundamentally. When a drink doesn't do that, you can't really imitate that same enjoyment. So when I go to pubs and things now, I don't bother looking at the mocktail menu. I just say, oh, just give me a cranberry juice, give me an elderflower. I'm not going to bother trying to mimic alcohol.
Yeah, I think when I first kind of stopped drinking, I wanted things that did really mimic it because I wanted to, you know, feel part of it. Also, I didn't want the questions from other people because that's one of the big things. So if I had a non-alcoholic beer, I found actually people just assumed it was an alcoholic beer. But then I think the longer that I've not drunk, the more I've gone into the kind of sodas, the kombuchas and the good, you know, mocktails. I don't necessarily go for the ones that are trying to replicate it, but I think it is really important at the start. I think they are really important for harm reduction. I think, you know, decaf coffee is huge. So when people stop drinking coffee, decaf is a good one. I think likening it to that is kind of a good way to go. But I think, I mean, so many people are buying them now. It's just huge.
Do they do non-alcoholic whiskey?
They do.
Oh, now that might be an idea.
Non-alcoholic. I mean, that's a ploys. I cannot.
That is the most disgusting thing I've ever tasted in my life, by the way. So absolutely.
But just get it away from me. That is an abuse to the palate. It's not right.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, I hope more people can go. I know plenty of people who I think could do with drinking less because it's just become a lifestyle. It's actually not very healthy for them. They're too young to be drinking that much. So I hope you can encourage more people to drink less, if anything else.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Millie Gooch there, who's author and founder of Sober Girl Society. That thing was hideous, that green monstrosity.
It's really not the one. It's pretty aggressive.
Yes, now moving on. We believe we may have found the UK's cheapest shop where everything, I'm told, apparently, they sell, it's 20 pence.
That's right. It's run by Stuart Nelson and his dad, Steve, who opened it 5 years ago. But with the cost of living squeeze, more and more people are turning to them to make ends meet.
Yeah, I'm really interested in this. Our reporter, Paul Hawkins, went along to the 20p shop in Otley in Yorkshire. Is it Otley or Otley?
Otley, I think.
OK.
I think so.
To speak to Stuart and have a rummage through the bargains. Love to see this. Let's have a look.
It's like a little car boot sale on the inside, but you don't have to bid for things. Everything's just 20 pence each. We've got massive amounts of stuff. It changes every day as well.
For kids of a certain age, this is a DVD. Surely no one is going to buy one of these.
People still buy them today.
This is a blank one that someone's made themselves.
Yeah.
Amazing. There might be one in here where they've taped the radio. Right? Do you remember we used to do that? And what sort of people come into shop?
We have everyone. Any different walks of life, millionaires, people in paid to paycheck, students coming out of Leeds, absolutely everyone.
£2 for the videos as well. Yeah, you've got 10 items, yes, so £2. Oh, is it 10 items? Yeah, everything's 20p in 20p.
We've seen a big influx because of the cost of living going through the roof, that more people are coming to the shop. It helps people out at 20 pence a piece. They can go and get any essential items they need, any bits and pieces. You know, we've got a children's bike we sold this Monday, just gone, and 20 pence a piece. It's going to go to a little girl, and they're going to enjoy it.
Are you money laundering again?
Yeah. It's a wonderful little shop. You can find all sorts of little, treasures.
Do you like this shop?
Yeah. I like looking at the books. I'm a book reader. I'm not Kindle.
What's the best thing about it? The price. How do you make money when everything is 20p? Where the hell is the profit margin?
The profit margin is in the shop. We buy everything a lot in wholesale. We buy massive amount of things to get in. 100,000 items at a time. We'll do job lots. We'll buy wherever we can if the margin's right.
And then over here, got records, vinyl, and there are some bargains that you could find here, right? Maybe stuff that's worth more than 20p.
Yeah. We had someone purchase a gold ring that was £120, right? Retailed £120 or more, bought it for 20 pence because we had it with all costume jewellery. Like I say, anything that comes in goes out.
Did you know it was 120 people when you put it out there?
We didn't know.
Have you got Eamon Holmes' autobiography here? This Is My Life?
Probably somewhere.
It might be in here somewhere. People are still using these then?
Yeah.
You don't need Google Maps or Waze.
Got 25 inches. It's all right, love. No hurry. It's not 25, it's 20. Can you take it out? Yeah.
Do you think if things keep going as they are, you might have to go become the 30p shop?
No, we're always the 20p shop. We'd love to have more space. Come 10 years' time, 20 years' time, I'd love to have, a few little shops everywhere, so we're helping out a lot more people.
Paul Hawkins, GB News.
Wow, so everything is actually 20p.
They could put that non-alcoholic absinthe in there and I think actually pay someone to drink it.
Buy it. Do you know what I do miss? I remember when Freddo's, the chocolate, was 10p.
Do you know, that is always used as the official unit of inflation, isn't it, the Freddo?
It is how much? I'm sure they're about 70p now or something.
Oh, probably well over a quid
remember
these days.
1p pick and mix in Woolworths.
Woolworths. I just remember Woolworths. Those were the days.
Anyway. Now, next year, the UK is set to host next year's Eurovision song contest. It will be held in the UK after organisers decided it would not be held in Ukraine, which were this year's winners. This is due to the ongoing conflict in the country, of course. While the Prime Minister Boris Johnson tweeted this last week. President Zelensky and I agreed that wherever Eurovision 2023 is held, it must celebrate the country and people of Ukraine. As we now host, the UK will honour that pledge directly and put on a fantastic contest on behalf of our Ukrainian friends. I think that non-alcoholic absinthe is going to my head. can't read anymore.
Yeah, they've laced it with other products.
Yeah.
Birmingham, Glasgow and Manchester are among cities who have expressed an interest in hosting the first British show since 1998.
Yes, well, GB News' own Eurovision expert and political correspondent Tom Harwood joins us now, as does Ellie Phillips, who's showbiz and entertainment journalist. Thanks for coming on, Ellie. Let's start with you. This is really good news, isn't it? Both for the Ukraine and the UK.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's really, really sad, obviously, that the next year's contest can't be held in Ukraine, but I think it's great that they've said that it will be in Ukraine, but it will be held in support of Ukraine. And all the organisations that have come together to kind of announce this, whether it's BBC or the EBU, have seemed really positive about this and very committed to making it a true reflection of Ukrainian culture, as well as having the diversity of British music in there. So I think it's amazing, and rightly so held here. Obviously, we came second in Turin this year with Sam Ryder, so it kind of by default comes to the UK to host. And I think that's wonderful. And hopefully, we'll get Kalush Orchestra, the winners of this year's competition, over to perform next year in 2023, likely to be held in May. And yeah, the question now is which host city and who will the hosts be? Like you said, back in 1998, it was Terry Wogan and Ulrika Johnson. They hosted it. I think this year I would put money on possibly someone like Davina McCall, maybe Vic Hope, because they both speak French. And traditionally with Eurovision, the hosts speak in English and then translate into French. But then also there's Graham Norton, Dermot O'Leary and Rylan, who've all been involved massively in Eurovision for many, many years now.
Tom, I don't know if you just heard that. Mercy was whispering in my ear when talking about the host of Eurovision, Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson.
Hey, why not? The man speaks a few languages. They love him in Ukraine.
Well, he is popular in Ukraine. He did live in Brussels for a while he was working as Brussels correspondent for The Telegraph, but perhaps his French isn't quite up to scratch. I don't know if you've ever heard him sort of bumbling through some French with French dignitaries. It's not perhaps the most fluent.
Restaurant French, not diplomatic French.
But I would not be surprised if there were perhaps some Ukrainians maybe hosting, maybe more than British celebrities. Perhaps we'd have someone that we hadn't heard of from Ukraine over. And of course, this is the big point of this event. It is in support of Ukraine. We're going to see Ukrainian flags all over the place. This is going to be really honouring that country. And it's interesting listening to the words of Boris Johnson, the words of Nadine Dorries, the Culture Secretary, the words of the BBC, that focusing that this is, it's great that we're hosting this, but it's also very, very sad that because of Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine that it can't be in that country. Now, looking for that host city, we'll see a long list this summer. There are some criteria that the host city needs to reach. It needs to have a stadium that can seat over 10,000 people. It needs to be within easy access of an international airport, and it needs to have a good supply of hotel rooms for the people that will no doubt come and watch all of the semi-finals and indeed the grand final as well. So really there's a limited number of cities that it could be, looking at some of those big cities, some of those names that we've already heard mentioned, whether Manchester, Birmingham, Cardiff, Glasgow, some mention of London as well, where the biggest Ukrainian diaspora is in this country. But yes, clearly an exciting time. One of the slight worries perhaps for the BBC is that this is a very expensive event to hold. When it was in Azerbaijan, it cost about £80 million. When it was hosted by, I believe it was Austria, that it was about £50 million. We don't have the complete sum for where it was in Italy this year, but it's going to be tens of millions of pounds, whatever it is. And the BBC, as we know, is struggling with its budget as things stand. So potentially that's a bit of a worry for the organisation that's
I'm going to cancel my licence, people. I have to pay for the monstrosity. Now, Ellie, everyone always says, don't they, every time Eurovision comes around, what are our chances of winning? And it always goes the same way. Everything is voted for on political alliances. And it seems to me that the way we're going to win next year is just to give more weapons.
I mean, yeah, possibly. It's always political. There's always those kind of like, oh, I wonder who they're going to give 12 till, and it's the obvious choice of who they're aligned with politically. But I think the big win for us next year will be hosting it. I don't know if we'll win or not, but I think the big win for whichever host city gets it is that despite this initial outlay, the cost, it's going to cost tens of millions, is that the host city will reap the rewards in terms of the tourism. For example, I'm a massive advocate, obviously, for Liverpool hosting it. We've got a huge arena conference centre. We've got Anfield Stadium, which recently saw Elton John play. We're the capital of music. We've got Beatles, Lipper, thriving music scene. All those things that are needed, we have there. And as has happened in previous events held in the city, we see that all the restaurants, bars, hotels, for not just the day itself, but the week leading up to any major international event like that, just does incredibly well, puts it back on the map in a certain extent, and also just brings in so much money to the city. So I think financially, in the end, it will do really well. And hopefully we can showcase all of our talent alongside Ukrainian talent, regardless of how the voting goes, because in the end, it's actually about the fun performances that we see, because they're always so outrageous.
Well, Ellie Phillips, thank you so much for joining us this morning, a showbiz and entertainment journalist, and Tom Harwood as well. We're not joking when you say the man is actually a Eurovision expert. We haven't randomly plucked him to come on and speak about Eurovision. He genuinely is a Eurovision.
We haven't got in. This will be the 9th time that the United Kingdom hosts Eurovision, more than any other country that has ever hosted it before.
Didn't I tell you the man?
You want that man on your quiz team, don't you?
Yes, well, keep all your thoughts coming in to us on our email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We will be back very shortly with today's top stories after this break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki and Alex Phillips on your TV, radio and online.
Yeah, we're with you for the next hour, getting straight to the point of the day's biggest stories, talking to expert guests and even giving our own opinions.
Yes, and make sure you get in touch with your views. As usual, GB Views at gbnews.uk. We'll get to as many views as we can before the show ends. But first, here's the latest headlines with Rosie.
Good morning, it's 2 minutes past 11. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak have faced off in the first head-to-head leadership debate. The two candidates to replace Boris Johnson traded blows over tax, with the Foreign Secretary saying Rishi Sunak would lead the country into recession. But the former Chancellor claimed there was nothing conservative about Ms Truss's approach.
Still haven't got an answer to this question, right? So if we could just get an answer to this question.
This Chancellor has raised taxes to the highest rate for 70 years.
Right.
And we're now predicted a recession.
OK, I now want to bring in
the figures.
Some have accused Rishi Sunak of speaking over Liz Truss during the debate. Well, the former Brexit Secretary David Davis told us the next Prime Minister needs to navigate robust debate.
He was passionate, and as he should be. I mean, the issues we're talking about here are huge. I mean, the next Prime Minister is going to face some of the most difficult crises possibly in a century. Whoever wins this contest is going to have to stand at the dispatch box of the House of Commons and deal with the House of Commons. I've done that, you know, and it's very fierce. It's very hard exchanges. If you can't cope with that, then, you know, you won't make a decent Prime Minister.
Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak will go head-to-head again tonight at 6 p.m. In some other news now, and Archie Battersby's parents are vowing to continue their son's life support fight, despite a legal ruling that his treatment can stop. Yesterday, appeal court judges ruled doctors at the Royal London Hospital could lawfully stop providing life-saving care. The 12-year-old hasn't regained consciousness since suffering an accident at home in April. There's now just over 24 hours before Archie can legally be taken off life support. Archie's mother, Holly, told us she'll appeal.
I believe we've still got one more option, which obviously we've come this far. I'm not going to stop now.
What is that option?
There's a possibility, the United Nations or the European Court, I believe. So we're deciding today. Obviously, it's not something any parent wants to face. Again, I'm just going to give it all I can until I can't go no more.
MPs are criticising the government over its handling of the coronavirus traffic light system, which set the rules for those arriving into the UK. The Public Accounts Committee says nearly £500 million was spent on the scheme, but only 2% of those required to quarantine in hotels actually tested positive. The committee also says the government's approach to border controls and quarantine caused huge confusion, with 10 rule changes in a year. Public concern over inflation has reached its highest level in 40 years. A poll by Ipsos found that 45% of adults think it's one of the most important issues facing the country today as prices continue to rise. In particular, those aged 18 to 34 were the most concerned. MPs have accused the energy regulator Ofgem of being negligent. The Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy says the government needs to change its out-of-date energy bill support for households. The Select Committee added that a massive insulation drive needs to be launched urgently, as it would permanently bring down bills. Energy expert Will Hodgson told us there are things we can all do to cut our energy costs.
Britain has got the oldest housing stock in Europe, right? And we can take pride, I think, in having built houses that were made to last. But those houses are drafty. They leak energy. And if you can plug those leaks, you're going to save up to £600 from your bill. So the message of yesteryear was switch energy supplier to get the best price. I think the message going forward is look for energy efficiency so as to reduce your energy usage.
Communities suffering from repeated flooding could benefit from a new £100 million funding package that's designed to help protect their properties. The money's going to be available for areas where 10 or more homes have flooded at least twice in the last 10 years. It's also for places where community-wide flood defences are not always viable. Increased drinking fuelled by the pandemic could lead to thousands of extra deaths over the next 20 years. It's a study by the University of Sheffield that found that people who were drinking at risky levels before the pandemic increased their alcohol consumption when COVID hit. The research scenario also shows that over the next 20 years, there'll be over 124,000 additional hospital admissions in men and 83,000 in women. This is GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the point.
Good morning, it's 11:06 and this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Muriki, and Alex Phillips on your TV, radio and online. We've got another hour lined up for you, so here's what's coming up.
Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak clashed last night in the first head-to-head debate in the race to be Britain's next Prime Minister. But what did you make of the debate? Or did you decide to just skip it altogether? Our first guest this hour called it the worst debate he's ever seen. We'll find out why when we talk to him shortly.
Yes, and the people of Northern Ireland are mourning the loss of former First Minister and Nobel Peace Prize laureate Lord David Trimble, who died yesterday at the age of 77. We'll talk to those who knew him, and Alex will be giving her views on him in just a moment.
And finally, the former SNP MP Margaret Ferrier will appear in court today, charged with travelling between Glasgow and London while knowing she had COVID symptoms. Our Scotland reporter David Donaldson is going to join us with the latest.
Yes, that's all coming up and much more as well across the programme over the next hour. You can get in touch with your views, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We will get to as many views as we can. But first, Alex going to give her views about Lord Trimble and his legacy.
Some enter politics to be someone, others to do something. And it would seem Lord Trimble was a man who was only interested in what was doable, even when it came at a significant personal cost. And what a legacy he left. A Nobel laureate with a quarter century of peace in his wake. A man who risked his political career and the safety of his family to deliver a once improbable agreement that ushered in a new era of stability following decades of bloody conflict in Northern Ireland. Today, you will read and hear a lot about this man and his life's work. Quite right too. But you should have been reading and hearing about his work over the past few years as well. For he did not stop fighting for Northern Ireland until the end. Many current and former politicians and commentators are extolling Trimble's virtue as an architect of the Good Friday Agreement. But where were they when the same man, with intimate knowledge of the treaty his own hands wrote, warned that the fragile structure upon which the end to 35 years of bloodshed was built was at risk from Brussels' cynical politicking over the Northern Irish border? Far from keeping the peace, the protocol risks a return to violence. His words, not mine, written just over 6 months ago. I feel betrayed personally by the Northern Ireland Protocol, and it's also why the Unionist population is so incensed at its imposition, wrote Lord Trimble, as he judicially challenged the cynical agreement designed to deliberately hurt Britain, even if it meant inflaming historic unrest that had already taken well over 1,000 lives. The protocol rips out the very heart of the agreement. It demolishes its central premise, Trimble writes. The sad fact is that the threat to peace and economic prosperity in Northern Ireland is totally unnecessary, he said. The EU has nothing to fear from the minuscule level of trade that crosses into its territory from Northern Ireland, and even that trade could be regulated without any need for checks on the border. Is the European Union intent on playing fast and loose with peace in Northern Ireland in order to punish the United Kingdom for voting for its independence from the European Union? A question asked by Lord Trimble, and the answer he knew very well was yes. And yet, for a man so venerated on his passing, for those to whom his truths were an inconvenience, he was willfully ignored, just when we needed him most.
I remember doing the Troubles in my A-level history class, and at that time it struck me how extraordinary it was that, you know, there was a literal civil war, and over 3,500 people, of course, died during the Troubles, and it's so incredibly difficult for people to imagine now how fractious those relationships were. We wouldn't see anything like it in this day and age, and for people like Lord Trimble to really be at the forefront of securing that peace agreement was, you know, you cannot understate how important that was for securing peace that is still fragile, to be fair.
But you'd imagine when someone like Trimble stood up and said the Northern Ireland Protocol and what the EU is doing risks the peace. The peace agreement that I wrote, it isn't defending it, it's doing the opposite, it's tearing it apart. People would listen. And they did not. He was shut out of the debate.
I think one of the most disappointing things relating to Brexit has been the Conservative Party's more or less abandonment, I would say, of the people of Northern Ireland. They're the Conservative and Unionist Party. You know, they should not be forgetting that second part of their name. And they haven't paid enough attention to this issue of Northern Ireland Protocol. And they have more or less put that border down the Irish Sea with what whilst they promised that would not happen. So, you know, really important man, really important legacy cannot be underestimated there. Give us your views, GBViews at gbnews.uk. Now, last night, the final two prime ministerial candidates, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, battled it out on the BBC in the latest leadership debate.
The two clashed over taxes, their respective Brexit records, the schools they went to, and their records in government. Sunak warned that interest rates would climb to 7% if Truss became PM, while she hit back, saying that his economic plans would lead us into a recession.
Yes, but the debate ended with some warm words for each other, especially for Rishi's dress sense. Yes, can you imagine? They actually spoke about their dress sense. And some praise as well for outgoing Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who Sunak said he would give a 10 out of 10 for some of his achievements in office. I think Liz Truss gave Boris a 7 out of 10 when she was quizzed on what she would rate him.
She was asked first, and Rishi saw it as a way to score points, didn't he?
Yeah, that was sneaky, wasn't it? Yeah. Well, let's have a listen to some of the exchanges from last night.
Under my plans, we would start paying down the debt in 3 years' time. So I'm not putting it on the never, never. I would start paying it down in 3 years.
Liz, that's simply not right. You promised almost £40 billion of unfunded tax cuts, £40 billion more borrowing. That is the country's credit card. It's our children and grandchildren, everyone here's kids, who are going to have to pick up the tab for that.
Rishi, that is not true.
There's nothing conservative about doing that.
Under my plans, we would start paying down the debt in 3 years' time. I don't believe this negative, declinist language.
It's your own
that we're
economic
hearing.
advisor, Liz. It's not mine. It's your own advisor.
I have lots of economists that are backing my plans. Everybody thinks that putting up taxes at this moment is going to hurt the economy.
Do you know what mortgage rates are in the US at the moment? Do you want to use them as an example? Their mortgage rates are almost 50% higher than mortgage rates in this country because they're borrowing so much.
I'm sorry, this
Canada.
is scaremongering.
Canada actually
this is Project Fear.
Liz, I remember the referendum campaign. I remember the referendum campaign, and there were only one of us who was on the side of Remain and Project Fear, and it was you, not me.
Okay.
And you talk
maybe
about
I've
this.
learnt from that.
What we do need to do is acknowledge that China is a threat to our national security. It's a threat to our economic security. And that's why, as Chancellor, I was pleased that we could put forward something called the National Security and Investment Bill. We also need to stand up for our values. And for example, when it came to Hong Kong, I was pleased to ensure that we put the funding in place to welcome to this country thousands of fleeing who wanted to leave Hong Kong.
Rishi, I challenged you on this in the debate last week. As recently as a month ago, you were pushing for closer trade relationships with China. This is not something you've advocated in government. I'm delighted that you've come round to my way of thinking.
See, I feel exhausted watching that again because I'm just so frustrated. Like, stop interrupting.
I see, you and I sort of disagree on this, don't we, as we were discussing when we were putting on our slap together. And I kind of always felt that these two characters seem a bit meh. You know, like, who do you really want going to the G7 and banging their fist on the table representing Britain? And I saw for the first time last night a bit of spikiness in Sunak. And I quite liked it.
I didn't doubt he had that, but I think it didn't look good for Rishi Sunak, is my opinion, because, I mean, he was just interrupting continuously, and it's really frustrating when you're trying to listen to somebody if somebody else is interrupting. But I don't think it looked good for Liz Truss as well, because I would never let somebody carry on interrupting me like that. I'd make sure I get my point. I wouldn't just stand there and watch them interrupt me continuously. So I don't think that was a good look, particularly.
She can't cope with Sunak. How's she going to cope with motor-mouth Macron?
Well, there you go. Well, political commentator for The Herald, Ian McWhirter, was watching last night and joins us now. Now, you tweeted last night, don't think I've ever seen a worse or worse chaired debate. What made you come to that conclusion?
Well, Rishi clearly blew it, as you've been suggesting there, by heckling and speaking over her. He made Liz Truss really sound almost statesman-like, which is quite a difficult feat to achieve. He didn't sound like a chancellor. He didn't sound like a future leader. He sounded like an outsider who was underconfident about what he was saying, even though what he was actually saying made a great deal of sense. For example, picking up Liz Truss and the fact that Patrick Minford, one of her key economic advisors, has said that as a result of her tax cuts and the economic situation, interest rates will have to rise to 5 to 7%. Now, that is a devastating point, but you really lose it if you just keep making the point again and again and again. Now, as I said, it's a really badly chaired debate. I think it was shocking. I mean, the presenter should have cut him off. She should have made sure that Liz Truss got an equal share. I think I would make a complaint to the BBC about that, because I think it was not simply not balanced. It was not conducted with due impartiality. But look, in the end, the only person who's smiling, I think, as a result of that, is Keir Starmer.
But do you not think, when it comes to Truss, that she was pushed around by Sunak, however unedifying that might have been, that she's being pushed around by the powers that be inside the party, who might see her as far easier to handle if she was in office than Sunak? And does this not mean that essentially that she would end up being pushed around on the world stage?
I don't think people saw her as being pushed around. I don't think the instant polls that came out afterwards of Conservative members indicated that they thought she'd been pushed around. I didn't think she was being pushed around. I thought she was actually taking a dignified stand against someone who was extremely underconfident and unsure of what they were saying. They had to keep repeating it and not allowing her to speak. Now, Liz Truss she tends to be very mechanical. She doesn't She doesn't think on her feet very well. But this showing actually managed to get her main strength across, which is what it appeared to be her imperturbability, her resolution, which is the kind of thing that she's been trading on really since her echoing of Margaret Thatcher. So I think, as I say, I think Rishi blew it.
What would advise? There's another debate today, of course. The Sun is holding its own debate with its viewers in the audience. Based on yesterday's performance, what advice would you give to both of them to improve on yesterday?
Oh, well, I mean, I think Liz Truss has to come up with some better lines. I mean, she keeps talking about this, hitting the ground running, and she's very mechanical in her delivery. She needs to get some more original witticisms, if that's not too much to expect from someone like Liz Truss, who admits that she's not the wittiest person or the best public speaker around. She needs to, and she really needs to think more carefully about her economic prospectus, because I'm afraid that if you actually listened to what Rishi Sunak was saying, which most people couldn't because he was making it very difficult because he was speaking over Liz Truss all the time, he did sound like he knew what he was doing. He had a very good case to put that the country had maxed out its credit card, had spent a fortune during the pandemic, and it has to be paid for. And he was saying, it's our responsibility, this generation's responsibility, to meet the costs of what was effectively a kind of wartime increase in public spending. That's absolutely right. And there's a terrible contradiction in what Liz Truss is saying, because of course she wants to increase spending on things like defence. She wants to, maintain spending on the National Health Service and what have you. And she's all going to pay it out of this, 31 billion headroom that she says exists in somewhere in the accounts. I mean, I don't know where Max Headroom is revived. Probably most of your viewers don't remember him. But anyway, she's invoked Max Headroom to say that she's got this extra 31 billion she's found behind the sofa. Well, the news is this: Britain's debt repayments. The government's debt repayments have just risen in June to 20 billion in 1 month. 20 billion in 1 month. Everyone's thought that taking on debt, well, it doesn't matter because it's low interest rates. No, it does matter. And we're really spending a fortune on debt. We're going to spend more on debt interest, on the interest payments on the government's debt, than is the entire expenditure in health and defence, in education, and defence. I mean, this is an economic situation which does require a sensible approach, and I think Rishi Sunak has it.
Yeah, I mean, terrifying numbers there. And if you are right, Ian McWhirter, then it seems that 0.29% of the population could vote to trash the economy on behalf of 65 million of us. Ian McWhirter, a political commentator for The Herald. Really great to get your insights.
Now, let's quickly go to our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who was there last night. Darren, just give us a summary of last night and what we can expect for tonight, because there's another debate.
Well, really fascinating, isn't it, given the ferocity, the fire almost, with Rishi Sunak started off that debate last night, and you've been discussing it over the last couple of minutes. The shouting match at times had turned into Liz Truss' camp very much briefing against Rishi Sunak today, suggesting that he's not fit for office, saying that his aggressive mansplaining and shouty private school behaviour is desperate, unbecoming and a gift to Labour. So despite the love-in towards the end of the debate last night, in which they both talked about how much they admired each other, clearly this is a pretty brutal campaign for both of them. I think you're right looking ahead to tonight when we move from where I am now, Stoke-on-Trent, to London, where there's another debate this evening between the two. Big question is, are we just going to hear these same arguments repeated over and over again, maybe with even more intensity later? We know that big divide on the economy. It's pretty clear what it is. It's pretty clear that it is a genuine choice for those Conservative members who can decide on all of this. Just two thoughts, really. First of all, I think there's a big question beyond this leadership campaign. Let's say, for example, Mercy, if Liz Truss wins this, how can Rishi Sunak, how can his supporters, given the, as I say, the ferocity with which they put that argument last night that Liz Truss' economic policy is irresponsible and fairy tale economics, can they genuinely get behind it in the autumn? Can this party unite behind that possible programme? I would suggest it's incredibly difficult. And also, I think as Ian was suggesting there, the big winner from these debates may be in the end at the Labour Party, because given all the blue and blue attacks, the Conservatives ripping chunks out of each other, they are filling up the kind of ammunition bucket, if you like, for the Labour Party to play these clips continuously in the months and years to come ahead of that general election. And in the end, you'd have to say that in some ways, these Conservative candidates are actually making the case for Labour rather than for themselves.
Well, Darren, thank you for that. I think it's interesting because if either one ends up in the winner's cabinet, they're going to have to support the policies.
But other than this economic thing, I don't see a cigarette paper between them. Everything else seems to be pretty much identical.
Yeah,
it's just,
but
I
it's
got
a
there
pretty big
first.
point of contention, isn't it? It's a pretty big disagreement they're having on the economy. And let's say they do end up, I mean, it'd be unlikely, sure, I don't know how it works. Maybe we can ask Tom Harwood. It's for them to end up in each other's cabinet, whoever wins, they'll have to go along with it because of collective cabinet responsibility. It'll be interesting. Well, tell us what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk. But after the break, we'll be looking back at the life of Lord David Trimble, who passed away sadly yesterday, aged 77. That's after this morning's weather.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain every Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m. A news hour that comes with a trigger warning. Scorching hot opinion with prominent guests saying the unsayable and a little bit of weekend fun thrown in. Unlike other broadcasters, I won't be forgetting what the B in our name stands for. So howie in for Real Britain Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
Good morning, it's 11:28 and this is To The Point with Alex Phillips and me, Mercy Moroki, on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio.
Now, former First Minister of Northern Ireland, Lord David Trimble, died yesterday, aged 77, after a short illness.
Yes, he received a Nobel Peace Prize for his work in negotiating the Good Friday Agreement of 1998, which brought an end to decades of conflict on the island of Ireland.
He was the leader of the Ulster Unionist Party when he was elected the first Minister of Northern Ireland on the 1st of July 1998. Former Prime Minister Tony Blair said his contribution to Northern Ireland and to the United Kingdom was immense, unforgettable and frankly irreplaceable.
Yes, former US President Bill Clinton has also spoken and said this of Lord Trimble. He said he was a leader of courage, vision and principle whose lifetime of service helped bring peace to Northern Ireland.
Well, Democratic Unionist Party MP Jim Shannon joins us now. Jim, this must be really sad news, especially in Northern Ireland. What are your memories of Lord Trimble?
Well, first of all, morning, ladies. Yeah, it's. I watched the news last night and I heard the breaking news coming on, and I sort of wonder, was it true? And unfortunately, it is. David Trimble leaves a legacy of important direction and focus for us through the Good Friday Agreement, which ultimately at the beginning we didn't support as a party and we had differences of opinion. But I do think that David Trimble, for many of us, set the focus, the direction, and probably the political progress for the future. For the last 25 years, for instance, it's very clear to me that politics has moved in the direction where we need to be. I probably never had as many discussions with David Trimble as others had, but whenever I became the Member of Parliament back in 2010, I had the opportunity to meet him on many occasions, and because he was in the House of Lords at that time, we had discussions with chats, with even cups of tea and meals together. And I always found him that perhaps he and I collectively were moving to the same political opinion on issues. We probably had much discussions about the Brexit agreement, because that's where I think his focus and my focus were over the last period of time. But he was an immense character, a man of great stature, of courage. He certainly was a visionary, and that's something that I would see him as. And I do believe that history will be most kind to him because of what he has done over the last few years and the direction he has sent Northern Ireland in, which I think many people today, Northern Ireland's a better place for his work that he has done.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost hard to remember now that we saw such devastating troubles taking place in Northern Ireland, 35 years ago. And he put his own security and the security of his family at risk by pursuing getting a peace treaty drawn up, didn't he?
Oh, he certainly did. I've lived through all the troubles, and I understand exactly what has happened. David Trimble put his life in the line, and his family's, Daphne and the children's life in the line, as many did across the whole of the province. I think he was focused on what was achievable, and with that goal in mind, he focused upon the goal, and led Northern Ireland in the direction where he wanted us to be, and where today I think we are better for. Did he live danger? He certainly did, but many others lived that same danger, and I think we're immensely in debt to David Trimble for all he's done.
Well, Jim Shannon, thank you so much for joining us this morning to share some of your memories and reflections on Lord Trimble there. We're going to go to former Brexit Party MEP Ben Habib, who worked closely with Lord Trimble. He joins us now. Good morning, Ben Habib. Good morning. What's your memory? What's your main memory of Lord Trimble?
Well, sadly, my association with Lord Trimble has been ever since the Northern Ireland Protocol came into being. And he saw the Northern Ireland Protocol as a fundamental breach of the Belfast Agreement, on which he'd worked so hard and dedicated so many years of his life, and which you've just been discussing, with Jim. And he was actually quite saddened, I think, in the latter part of, in the last couple of years as a result of the protocol, because he could see that that great work that he had done in the late 1990s was being unwound by the protocol. At the heart of the Belfast Agreement is a principle that there has to be cross-community consent for significant changes to Northern Ireland, particularly, obviously, the constitutional setup of Northern Ireland. And the protocol was foisted on Northern Ireland without so much as, a cursory glance at what the cross-community views might be. In fact, government sneakily changed the Northern Ireland Act 1998 in order to remove cross-community consent as a prerequisite for settling the protocol on Northern Ireland. So actually my association with David Trimble was one of really galvanising the fight against the protocol. He was a co-litigant alongside myself and others in the case that we brought against the government to overturn the protocol. And it is very sad that he won't see the protocol defeated, and that the fight is now left to us. But I did have an exchange of emails this morning with Lady Trimble, and she said to me that, David was completely behind the fight and that he would want us to go on and battle it out, which of course we will, with double resolve. I mean, I was utterly committed to the defeat of the protocol anyway, but I absolutely, with David's memory in mind, we are not going to let this bone go.
Does it really annoy you to see, big beasts of politics, former statesmen like Tony Blair, Bill Clinton, taking the time to pay their respects online and rightfully celebrating Trimble and his work on being one of the architects of the Good Friday Agreement? And yet, when in the middle of all the throes post-Brexit, he was saying this is dangerous, this shouldn't happen, the Northern Ireland Protocol is reckless politicking, the EU are taking us as fools, that they did nothing, they didn't listen to him.
No, they didn't. And, David Trimble is part of an era where politicians really did have conviction, really did have courage, and stood up for what they believed in. Now, a lot of people didn't believe in the Belfast Agreement, but he did, and he stood up for it and he got it settled. And people like Bill Clinton and Tony Blair, who praise Lord Trimble, must equally, therefore, condemn the protocol, but they don't. Because they're Europhiles. And, we had Nancy Pelosi here, in Northern Ireland anyway, a couple of weeks ago, saying that there would be no trade deal with the United Kingdom if we dared to tinker with the protocol to take Northern Ireland back into the United Kingdom. And so there's not joined up thinking on this. And if people really thought about it for a second and they really understood the importance of the Belfast Agreement in Northern Ireland, they would condemn the protocol. Nancy Pelosi, if she really did her reading and understood the situation, would be condemning the protocol, not condemning those of us who wish to remove it.
You spent time with Trimble, discussing this with him, hearing his thoughts and his views. How worried was he personally that the effects of the Northern Ireland Protocol could inflame tensions that have been defeated?
Well, I mean, the tensions have been inflamed, haven't they? Stormont is no longer functioning. We've seen marches, we've seen the resurgence of, it was albeit a hoax bomb scare, but one that was perpetrated with real guns and the real abduction of someone while the hoax took place. And these things are only going to get worse. Remember, we're in the grace periods of the protocol at the moment, so we haven't fully experienced its impact. And people are only now beginning to realise that the protocol presents an existential threat to our very fabric of the United Kingdom. This is not some kind of legal technicality which we just need to get over a hurdle. This is a direct attack on the integrity of the United Kingdom. That's what people need to understand. That's what Lord Trimble understood. And it was foisted on Northern Ireland, without cross-community consent, which is a fundamental principle of the Belfast Agreement. So yes, the peace process is now threatened.
Can I just ask, but very finally, obviously we have two potential prime ministers in waiting at the moment. Which one of the two, Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak, would you entrust to deal with this issue in the way that you would like to see it dealt with?
Well, I don't believe Rishi Sunak is a Brexiteer. And I think Liz Truss has got more Brexit about her than he has. He likes to work through international institutions. Liz Truss is the one who's brought forward the Northern Ireland Protocol bill to new to the protocol. So in Liz Truss, I'm trusting. There is a much better way, which I want to get on air. There's a much better way to new to the protocol than her Northern Ireland Protocol bill, even though I applaud her for having it, an attempt to sort out the protocol. But the better way to sort it out is to concede the legal action that Lord Trimble, myself and others have brought against the government and accept that the protocol is unlawful and ditch it completely. That would be the simple, straightforward, morally and legally correct thing to do.
Ben Habib, thank you so much for coming on and talking about Lord Trimble, his legacy and, of course, the work that he and you were doing together over the Northern Ireland Protocol.
Now, after the break, England's Lionesses are facing Sweden tonight in the Women's Euro semi-finals. Could the Lionesses do what the men's team could not? And what does their success mean to all those younger women who want to pursue a career in professional football? We'll be discussing all of that after a quick break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good morning, it's 11:41 and you're watching and listening to The Point with me, Mercy Moroki and Alex Phillips on GB News. As ever, we're live on your TV, online and radio.
Now, we may believe we found the UK's cheapest shop where everything they sell is just 20p.
Yes, well, it's run by Stuart Nelson and his dad, Steve, who opened it 5 years ago, but with the cost of living squeeze, more and more people are turning to them to make ends meet.
Our reporter, Paul Hawkins, went along to the 20p shop in Otley in Yorkshire to speak to Stuart and have a rummage through the bargains.
It's like a little car boot sale on the inside, but you don't have to bid for things, everything's just 20 pence each. We've got massive amounts of stuff. It changes every day as well.
For kids of a certain age, this is a DVD. Surely no one is going to buy one of these.
People still buy them today.
This is a blank one that someone's made themselves.
Yeah.
Amazing. There might be one in here where they've taped the radio. Right? Do you remember we used to do that? And what sort of people come into shop?
We have everyone. Any different walks of life, millionaires, people in paid to paycheck, students coming out of Leeds, absolutely everyone.
£2 for the videos as well. Yeah, you've got 10 items, yes, so £2. Oh, is it 10 items? All right. Yeah, everything's 20p in 20 pieces.
We've seen a big influx because of the cost of living going through the roof, that more people are coming to the shop. It helps people out at 20 pence a piece. They can go and get any essential items they need, any bits and pieces. You know, we've got a children's bike we sold this Monday, just gone, and 20 pence a piece. It's going to go to a little girl and they're going to enjoy it.
Are you money laundering again?
Yeah. It's a wonderful little shop. You can find all sorts of little, treasures.
Do you like this shop?
Yeah. I like looking at the books. I'm a book reader. I'm not Kindle.
What's the best thing about it? The price. How do you make money when everything is 20p? Where the hell is the profit margin?
The profit margin is in the shop. We buy everything a lot in wholesale. We buy massive amount of things to get in, 100,000 items at a time. We'll do job lots, we'll buy wherever we can if the margin's right.
And then over here, got records, vinyl, and there are some bargains that you could find here, right? Maybe stuff that's worth more than 20p.
Yeah. We had someone purchase a gold ring that was £120, right? Retailed at £120 or more, bought it for 20 pence because we had it with all costume jewellery. Like I say, anything that comes in goes out.
Did you know it was 120p when you put it out there?
We didn't know.
Have you got Eamon Holmes' autobiography here? This Is My Life?
Probably somewhere.
It might be in here somewhere. God, people are still using these then?
Yeah.
You don't need Google Maps or Waze.
Got 25 inches. It's all right, love. No hurry. It's not 25, it's 20. Can you take it out? Yeah.
Do you think if things keep going as they are, you might have to go become the 30p shop?
No, we're always the 20p shop. We'd love to have more space. Come 10 years' time, 20 years' time, I'd love to have, a few little shops everywhere, so we're helping out a lot more people.
Wow, I think that if that is a workable business model, because as it says on the door there, it's not a charity, it's a shop where everything's 20 pence. And he says he's able to do that because he buys massive amounts of stock wholesale, and so it is actually profitable. If that is profitable, I mean, I know it's in Yorkshire and not in London, but why aren't more people doing it? A little girl's bike was 20p. That's insane.
Yeah, the problem is online, isn't it? Everyone's just buying tats from China to be delivered to their door, and it's so cheap they think, I don't need it, throw it away.
The problem with me, if I went into a shop like that, is I'd end up buying so much stuff that I do not need, because it's what I do. I have to avoid looking at items when I'm walking past the home section.
Is that your weakness, the home section?
It's my weakness. I have cushions and nice plates.
My weakness is food shopping. I love cooking, so I'll be walking around the food shop buying things I actually need, and then I'll see some sort of like peppercorn and truffle essence or something. I'll be, oh yeah, obviously need that.
I find supermarket shopping quite stressful because there's too much choice. I just want a can of beans, and there's about 7,000 brands of beans and all sorts. Just give me a can of beans.
Well, you're a cheap date, you are. I'll invite you over for dinner at the end of the week.
Pleased, yeah. Let's go to some of your views. If you don't have a drinking problem, why stop drinking, Anthony says. We tried some... I've got something in my throat. We tried some non-alcoholic beverages earlier. What did we try? We tried absinthe.
They're down here if you want them.
Absinthe was terrible.
It was absence of flavour, I think.
Yeah, good one.
I know. They don't pay me the big bucks for nothing. But no, I mean, look, Anthony, you might have a point, but some people just, want to, for all sorts of reasons, isn't it? Cutting down calories, a better night's sleep. If you've got kids you've got to look after, it might be difficult to do that if you're half a bottle of Chardonnay down, so...
There are benefits, even if you don't have a drinking problem, there are benefits. Mick says in Birmingham here, morning, ladies. Liverpool is the last city that should be given Eurovision. It's a city whose residents booed our national anthem. It's a disgrace. Well, the whole city didn't boo.
It looks like it's Mick in Birmingham. I bet we know who he's going to go for.
He needed to state that.
I would set up a petition to prevent it happening.
Anywhere in the
anywhere but here.
Look, I'm not the biggest fan of Eurovision, I'll have to admit. I was when I was younger, but it's a bit of fun, I guess, for a couple of days of the year.
It's a zoo. It's a zoo. Here we go. Views on people like views of people on Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss. Andrew, rude Rishi, he says. I think Rishi's continual interruptions and talking over Liz is just the height of bad manners, and I expect better from a potential British Prime Minister. That alone make me not want him. Manners are key.
Yes, well, Paul said during the debate, Truss looked calm and collected. Sunak, even when he constantly interrupted, looked desperate and scared. I think you're right, Paul. I think it did backfire quite significantly on Rishi Sunak. Hopefully, well, it'd be interesting to see if he changes tack.
Do you want me to have a glass, would you? And I'll read this next link. Don't you worry about that. Just, you look after yourself then, first. Now, England are once again looking to bring football home, but this time it's for the women. Are you ready yet? No? OK. Our Lionesses are chasing the European Women's Championship final for the third time, facing Sweden tonight in Sheffield. in what is sure to be a dramatic semi-final match. In fact, Bramall Lane's 32,000-seat stadium is expected to be completely full of fans tonight, and after 9 million watched their quarter-final win over Spain, the Lionesses are sure to have many fans at home behind them too.
I'm not ready.
No? OK, someone... I'm worried I'm going to have to resuscitate her in a minute, so I'm going to blast through this. Someone sure to be watching tonight is our next guest, Lauren Smith, who is the women's team head coach of the Bristol City Football Club. Great to have you on. So, I mean, there's so much hype around this match, isn't there? It's wonderful to see the country getting behind women's sport.
Yeah, I think how it's built up over this whole tournament and England getting as far as they have so far is excellent, and it's just great to see that the country getting behind them.
What do you think our chances are? I mean, you know, people are saying, well, we could do better than the men have managed to do so far. I mean, could we be taking home the trophy?
I think England are playing their best football that they have in years. So we are definitely seeing the best Lionesses team that has existed in the recent years. So they've got a very, very good chance. But ultimately, you know, the best 4 teams are in the quarterfinals. So, you know, there hasn't been any upsets yet. So, you know, I think it's going to be a real tight game tonight.
I think I've recovered from my coughing fit, so I'm back in action. I wondered if it's caught on, because I have a little girl myself, she's 7 years old, and I've never really seen little girls being too enthusiastic about football. Now that they're seeing sort of women playing, do you think it's going to catch on and we might see little girl footballers running around?
Well, being a head coach, I certainly hope so. I think if we can inspire a new generation, or even the little girls out there that have never been interested to get involved, absolutely. I think, you know, we'll see fruition on this. You know, people in stadiums, in the WSL and Championship, hopefully. But hopefully it rolls on and we get so much more support. And whether that's your 7-year-old getting on a football or a 70-year-old coming to watch our games, I think if we can inspire people to come and watch our sport, I think that'll be a great thing that the Lionesses and the tournament has done for the country.
Is there any difference between the way the men's game is sort of organised and looked after and managed and afforded, and the women's game as well? Because male footballers are on ridiculous amounts of money. You know, the millions and millions and millions where clubs are paying, you know, through the nose during the transfer window or whatever it's called. But I'd imagine the women's game doesn't exactly invite the same sort of revenue.
No, it doesn't at the moment. There's some, you know, bigger clubs that put a lot of money into the women's side of things, but it's more than just money for us, for clubs, for people involved. It's something that we've been striving for. So the more professional the teams become, so, you know, for example, us at Bristol City, we are a full-time club, so all our players get paid. The Championship, so Tier 2, is getting more and more like that, and I think the bigger that we can get to where women can play football and be paid for their profession, what they're excellent at, the better. So, yes, the money isn't the same. A lot of things aren't the same, and there's good things and bad things about that. Obviously, people should be paid what they're due, but at the same time, you know, I think if you went to a men's game then a women's game, you'd see that the atmosphere is different, and that's one of the really, really good things about women's football is, you know, I think you could take your children, you could take your granddad, and you'd have a really good experience because it's different, and hopefully that's what people fall in love with, and we get further and further, and it develops down the years.
And what will you guys be doing, should I say you ladies, the Bristol City Football Club, the women's team, to cheer on the Lionesses? Are you organising some sort of social, like get-together, or watch it together on the big screen?
We have been watching a few of the games down at our Ashton Gate, so our stadium. So we have been there a couple of times. I'm not sure. I think everyone will be doing their own thing tonight. We've got a few mix of players in. So we've got a few Welsh players, Irish. So it's not that everyone's cup of tea, but I'm sure everybody will be watching it. But I'm not sure who they'll be supporting.
OK, well, Lauren, thank you for joining us this morning, women's team head coach of the Bristol City Football Club. We wish the Lionesses all the best, of course.
You always said Bristol and almost Bristol accent, then Brittle.
Brittle.
Yeah.
I was thinking, we were speaking earlier about when being a tomboy used to be cool.
Right.
You were saying in the 90s.
The 90s, the culture of the ladette.
I was born in the mid-90s, so I don't remember the 90s. But do you think football, the Lionesses, might bring back the cool tomboy kind of look?
It's funny you say that, because I remember one of the big films, I think it was the late 90s, was Bend It Like Beckham, which shot Keira Knightley to fame about women's football team. But yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, I always think that apart from this preening and posing, blow up your lips, stick out your backside Kardashian culture with a K, revolting. It's much better when girls are like getting mud on their knees.
I used to be a real tomboy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hated all things girly when I was. But now
And
look at me.
look at this
Look at me.
evolution.
In pink, and my nails are pink too.
Yeah.
Well,
what an evolution.
I know. Anyway, little reminder that tomorrow, every Wednesday, we hand our show over to you. It's your show, full of your ideas, and we basically talk about whatever it is you want us to talk about and what you think are the most important stories. So here's what you need to do. Get in touch with us and tell us the subjects that you want to see covered and the questions you want answering. The email is tothepoint@gbnews.uk. We've already had lots of emails in, lots of suggestions, so keep them coming in. And tomorrow we will hand the show over to you.
That's a nice little idea, that.
It is.
I haven't seen that. Like, you could call it the Wedatorial, you know, the editorial on Wednesday.
It doesn't quite work.
No? All right, OK. Not my show.
Well, that is it from us. You're not here tomorrow, are you?
No.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
Accompanied by someone else, but I'm back with you next week.
Great, it's been a pleasure. That's it from us here at To The Point. Now, don't go away, though, because up next is The Briefing, this time with Esther McVeigh. That's after this weather.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A rather cloudy day for many of us with scattered showers. Not for all, however. There will be some places that stay dry and there will be increasing sunny spells later in the day. A ridge of high pressure is building in. Still the influence of low pressure towards Scandinavia, however, and coolish north to northwesterly airflow across the country. So a lot of cloud cover. Sunshine in short supply and scattered showers developing, most notably Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, into northern and central parts of England. There will be increasingly sunny spells developing later, especially for Wales and the southwest, and feeling pleasant enough with lighter winds compared with Monday. Temperatures reaching the low 20s in the south and high teens in the north. Into the evening, the cloud increasingly disappears. A few fog patches will form actually over, say, higher parts of Wales and northern England.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it. Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.